Swamiji, this is a question from a devotee who would rather remain anonymous.
All right.
Involuntary thoughts are mostly negative and bad. How do we uproot them? If we are what we think, does it mean these ugly thoughts will bring us suffering and misery? If what we think, that we become, then how does karma come into play? I have noticed people who are positive thinkers and are not necessarily good people, but have very good peaceful lives. So is it my thought or is it my karma that makes my destiny?
I'll answer the last one first. Is it my thought or is it my karma that makes my destiny? Both. Yes, that's an easy one. But let's go back to the first one. Our thoughts which come up in the mind, the person who writes this says that it is often it is negative, not helpful. What happens is this. If we introspect inwards, we'll see that the thoughts which come up from some unknown source, from a subconscious reservoir of tendencies. The Yoga Sutra, which is the manual par excellence on meditation, the most ancient book on meditation which we have, the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. There are different commentaries on that. One of the main commentary is by Vyasa. It's called Vyasa Bhashya, commentary by Vyasa. There an interesting discussion takes place exactly on this subject. What it says there is that we have a storehouse of tendencies or traces, what in the modern world we might call the subconscious mind. The yogic term for that is samskaras. Samskaras are traces which are left in our mind by past actions, not necessarily in one birth. If you're a Hindu or a Buddhist or a Jain or a Sikh, you believe in many births. So maybe from many past lives, in our subtle body, especially in the mind, these samskaras are there, these tendencies. And they bubble up. And they become conscious thoughts. It's only at a late stage that we become aware of a desire, an annoyance, an irritation, something that's bubbling up from within, which might not be caused by anything in the world outside. Or it might be a reaction to something caused in the world. It comes from within. Where it comes from? From those samskaras. Now, so one word is samskara. Samskaras are traces left in the subconscious mind by our past actions, past language, what we say, and past thoughts. So thought, word and deed, they leave traces on our mind, especially if they're repeated again and again. Now these samskaras become conscious thoughts or thoughts at the level of the conscious mind. When it comes to the conscious mind, the Sanskrit word for that is vritti. Vritti is a modification of the mind stuff. Like a little wave comes up on a lake. So the mind is like a lake, a wave comes up in the lake. A thought, a desire, something. Maybe anger, maybe resentment, maybe guilt, various kinds of thoughts, they come up. Maybe memories surface suddenly for no good reason at all. So these become vrittis. And then what happens is, if you entertain those vrittis, if the vritti stays on the surface of the mind long enough, it sinks back into the mind, into the subconscious mind, and becomes a samskara. So you see the cycle. Samskara bubbles up, comes up as a vritti. And the vritti dwells in the surface of the mind. Especially if you act upon it. If the thought comes up, and if you express it in speech and action, then the vritti gets strengthened. And it sinks back again. It seems to go away from our mind after a while. Even the most fearsome rage or the most darkest depression, it goes away. But it does not disappear. It goes back into the storehouse of samskaras and strengthens existing samskaras or creates new ones. This cycle of samskara and vritti goes on unceasingly day and night in all our waking moments, especially even dreams. So this is a cycle which goes on. In the commentary in Sanskrit it is said, Evam vritti samskara rupa chakram aharnisham vartamanam. Day and night this cycle is rotating. Now, because of the way we have led our lives, not carefully, not mindfully, a lot of negative stuff has gone into our minds. I sometimes joke that we are so careful about what we eat, and you would not go to a dumpster and put your hand in there and bring out food and eat it, rotten food. Your tummy would be upset immediately. But we do that to our minds. We take in things from the world indiscriminately. We dump things into the mind until it becomes a mental dumpster. So no wonder that the mind is full of negativities. Now what do you do about it? Because it is rotating continuously. Normally we don't do anything about it. And so, like in computers, you have a default mode. When you boot a computer, whatever is programmed, that will start. So whatever is in there, that bubbles up, and we sort of act on that, and we live. This is our life. But you can consciously change it. Yoga says we can consciously change our vrittis and thereby our samskaras. The samskaras, the tendencies, the storehouse, we have no direct access to that. It's something that in the modern times Freud discovered, that there is a subconscious layer to the mind, though it is being challenged now by modern psychology. So this seems to be the storehouse in our mind to which we have no direct access. That's why your therapist, not right now, but maybe 40 or 50 years ago when Freudian psychotherapy was all the rage, and they would ask you for the contents of your dreams or free associate, sit down on the couch and talk, things like that. Because we have no direct access to the subconscious storehouse, it is only in dreams or in free association what bubbles up. They want to see, the therapist wants to see what bubbles up from within. So those are the samskaras. We have no direct access to it. But what we do have direct access to are the vrittis. So as the conscious thoughts, as they come to the conscious level, we become aware of it. And before it takes hold, before it becomes strong, before it becomes an irresistible tendency to, punch that irritating guy, or to sink into depression and I will not get out of bed today, the world is dark. Before it becomes that, the thought comes up. It's still fresh and weak before we give it power by acting on it or starting to do things. At that time, yoga says you can replace a negative vritti with a positive vritti. I'll repeat that. These thoughts which come up in our minds, at the initial stage when they come up, they can be replaced. A skillful yogi will replace negativities with positive thoughts. Thoughts of anger with thoughts of peace. Thoughts of jealousy with thoughts of happiness. Thoughts of depression with positive thoughts. So you can replace this, and this is possible. If you replace it, a negative thought with a positive, instead of just letting it come up and express itself, if you replace it, what will happen is you will dwell with a positive thought, a positive vritti for some time, and that will sink back into the storehouse, thereby weakening the negative vrittis and setting up new positive vrittis. If you're with me so far, this nice example I read of a Zen teacher, and the student goes and complains about exactly this thing, that when I meditate, all sorts of negative thoughts come up in the mind. Bad thoughts, unwanted thoughts. And the teacher said, here is a bowl with stones, the polished stones which there are in the Japanese gardens. So smooth stones, black stones and white stones. And here's an empty bowl. Whenever a negative thought bubbles up in your mind, in your calmness of meditation, take a black stone and put it in the empty bowl. If a positive thought comes, take a white stone and put it in the empty bowl. And go on practicing like this. And the student did that. Initially, what happened? The bowl, empty bowl, was soon filled up with black stones. Maybe 1 or 2 white stones were there. But over time, as he watched, over time, slowly the white stones in the bowl increased till one day the bowl was mostly white stones. What it means is slowly we can reprogram, change the inner conditioning. The practice is to replace negative thoughts, vrittis, with positive ones. Now it's easy to say that, not so easy to do it. What is required, what enables us to do it, is a calm and meditative mind. If the mind is not meditative, habitually a little calm and reflective and introspective and quiet, what will happen is, before you know it, negative vrittis have bubbled up from the mind and taken over the mind. We have patterns of thinking. We think thousands of thoughts in a day, but the thoughts are not original or different or new. Mostly they are the same kind of thoughts. So let's become aware of our thought patterns. Put a little distance between yourself and the mind. You are not the mind. If there's one lesson that you should take away from the Vedanta society, is that we are not our minds. We are the knowers, the illuminers, the witness of our minds. In my light, the mind functions. Thoughts come up, stay, and disappear. The mind is an instrument. Just like the body is an instrument, the mind is an app, a collection of apps. So you can use it as you will. Normally it does not seem like that. It seems that it has taken over us. It's because we have given it power. The way to take control of the mind is to first become calm, put a little distance between yourself and the mind psychologically, and then try this process. It's an ancient insight, a commentary on the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, which is an answer to this question. You can replace negative vrittis with positive ones, unwanted thought patterns with healthy thought patterns. At first it will be a struggle, will be difficult, but worthwhile. Over time it changes. The Gita says the mind alone is your worst enemy and is your best friend. Krishna says that in the Gita. How is the mind the worst enemy and the best friend? The mind uncontrolled is your worst enemy. The mind controlled is your best friend. I think it's Milton, the poet, who wrote in Paradise Lost, the mind in its own place can make a heaven of hell and a hell of heaven. The mind by itself. Doesn't matter what your external circumstances are, how bad it is. It can be transformed into a heaven by the mind, just by the attitude, the way the mind reacts to the circumstances. No matter how good one's circumstances are, it can be transformed into a hell by the mind uncontrolled. I was teaching children for a long time and young people for 2 decades nearly. And I saw young people from the best of families where parents were rich and prosperous and good family, all of that is there, and yet they ruin themselves, maybe by drug addiction or by some kind of something. And children coming up sometimes from the worst of circumstances, a terrible struggle, and they make their lives, they have wonderful lives, which they create themselves. The difference is in the mind. All right.